It's so good to see you.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and honest mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover, leaf, and thyme. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for them and for
Welcome, friends, gathered in the sanctuary on Zoom and later on our YouTube channel. It is so good to be together. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Franklin, to the Smoky Mountains of Western North Carolina and Northeast Georgia, and the ancestral home of the Cherokee people. We're a lay-led congregation of progressive minds and caring connections for over 53 years. My name is Mary Teslow, and I'm delighted to be your service leader this morning. We extend a warm welcome to those who may be visiting with us today for the first time or returning after a while. We're so glad you're with us and look forward to getting to know you better. There'll be an opportunity to introduce yourself later in the service, and you can sign up for our newsletter in the guest book in the foyer or by adding your information in the chat on Zoom. As we gather each Sunday, we take a moment to greet each other on Zoom and here in the sanctuary, affectionately the Zoomies and the Roomies. Roomies, please rise, embody your spirit for the wave hello, and stay standing for the gathering song, hymn 123 in the gray hymnal. Roomies, please turn and look to your right to the camera above the door and wave to our Zoomies. Yay, and now our gathering song, we have to do it ourselves because Jude's at home today. So Spirit of Life in both English and Spanish to honor. all please have a seat. This simple act of connection reminds us, despite our distance, we're all part of one loving community. Our fellowship is a light for liberal religion in the mountains that values diversity and the richness it brings to our community. Our celebration of diversity is reflected in the variety of our Sunday services. In addition to different topics, our service sequence and length may vary. This week, our nation celebrates the 250th anniversary of its independence. Today, we explore not only what has been achieved, but what still calls us forward. We hope today's service enriches your journey of discovery. Our chalice lighting. We light this chalice in gratitude for all who dreamed that ordinary people might govern themselves with wisdom and compassion. We remember that liberty is not inherited once and for all. It is renewed by courage, by kindness, by truth, and by each generation willing to enlarge the promise of freedom. May this flame remind us that democracy is more than a system. It is a spiritual practice of listening, participation, and hope. Our opening words. For Unitarian Universalists, patriotism has never meant believing our country is perfect. It has meant loving our country enough to tell the truth about it, to celebrate its gifts, to acknowledge its failures, and to keep working toward the ideals that inspired its founding. That every person possesses inherent worth and dignity, that liberty belongs to everyone, and that democracy depends upon people who choose courage over complacency. Our opening hymn is number 121, We'll Build a Land.
We'll build a land where we find our
We're delighted to welcome back John deVille. John was born in Highlands in 1962 in a hospital that his sister later converted to the nonprofit Peggy Crosby Center in the 1990s. His mother, Lynn deVille, was a teacher in Highlands, and both she and his father started the Stone Lantern in 1960, which remained a family business until 2019. His parents were married in a UU Fellowship Hall in 1959. John holds a BA in philosophy from UNC Chapel Hill and a BS in social science education from Western Carolina. He has taught American history, philosophy, and government at Franklin High since 1996 and was Macon County Teacher of the Year in 2006. He has conducted free philosophy and history classes for adults the past 7 years and is currently leading seminars on the American Revolution this spring and fall. He served as an executive director for the Macon County Historical Museum since November 2024. Please join me in welcoming John with his message, What Does the Declaration of Independence Mean 250 years later?
All right, we'll see if we can get the PowerPoint going here. All right, let's see. All righty. So good morning, and thank you to Mary and to this wonderful fellowship for having me back. I'm always excited and a bit anxious when Mary gives me a deadline because that forces me to finally focus. My guess is that this 250th anniversary of the declaring of our independence finds this fellowship a bit more subdued than it perhaps thought it might be 50 years ago when we celebrated our bicentennial. Perhaps we perceive that a fog, a pall has befallen our land. We sense deep division. Perhaps we have a sense of foreboding, a sense infused by dreams of release, reconciliation, and relief. And I hear exclamations that perhaps the American sun is setting for a final time, a doomsday scenario that has at least intermittent hold on our imaginations. I don't think that the sun is setting for the final time. In fact, I don't think it's setting. I see it rising, and I'll come back to that in a bit. So, is democracy fragile? And where are we in the scheme of things the past 250 years? Let's go back to the very beginning. Let's go to the summer of 1776, because I think that this tends to put things in a bit more perspective. This is what George Washington, the Continental Congress, the Continental Army are facing. They're facing 32,000 professional troops under General Howe, the largest expeditionary force that Britain had ever sent overseas. 8,000 and 9,000 are German mercenaries, Hessians. There's 400 ships under Admiral Howe, including 75 warships, about 45% of the Royal Navy's active strength. The British force also included 10 to 13,000 sailors supporting the Royal Navy, 270 ships overall. Well, what does Washington have to go against that? He's got 19 to 23,000 men. A lot of them are sick. A lot of them are suffering from smallpox, other illness. They're not well fed. 25% most of the time are on the sick rolls. Most of these enlistees are militia or they're 1-year enlistments, and a lot of those enlistments are due to expire December 31st, 1776. So let's get to the declaration here. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. Unanimous? No, it's not unanimous. The state's leadership is unanimous, but let's understand this. At any one time, rebel support, patriot support is around 30%, maybe 35% on a good day. Loyalist support is in the 35%. And these sides change. These numbers are in flux, and a lot of people just don't care. They just want peace. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another. And I ask, one people. Were we ever a people? What kind of people were we? And who were the other people? Think about that. And to assume among the powers of the earth a separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind required that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So let's take a look at that phrase right there, laws of nature and nature's God. Now that is pure Lockean Enlightenment thinking, but it's married to this burgeoning covenant ideology. And the wellspring for that covenant ideology comes from a Boston minister, Jonathan Mayhew, who was the pastor of the West End Boston Church, who many historians consider to be the first Unitarian church in New England. And this is in 1750, and Mayhew gives this sermon that actually increases importance as we get closer to 1776, and he's taking Romans 13, verses 1 through 7, and he's flipping them on their head. Now, if you go look at Romans 13, 1 through 7, you're going to find it's basically render unto Caesar what's Caesar's. And what Mayhew is preaching from his pulpit at West End Church is that the sovereign, the king, the monarch, has a responsibility to the parishioners, to the masses. And if the leadership is not responsive to the needs of the people, then the people can overthrow that monarch. They owe that monarch no respect. That's 26 years before the Declaration. So those ideas coming out of the pulpit are married to the Enlightenment ideas. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So let's talk about that, the consent of the governed, because consent of the governed, that is sovereignty. Okay, the right of a people to 20 million, 300 million, to rule themselves. Sovereignty also makes the Declaration of Independence an inherently anti-imperial document. It is a critique of British colonialism. It is a critique of British imperialism. And Jefferson writes this, and he believes it, except when it comes to Native Americans. And that's a different story, because when you get down to the list of grievances enumerated in the Declaration, we get this gem. He has excited domestic insurrections, referring to the king here. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. So how much do we really believe in sovereignty? How much do we believe in the consent of the governed? Because I think believing and forcing our leadership to adhere to this consent of government, to adhere to sovereignty, both at home and abroad, is essential to a healthy democracy. When we ignore sovereignty abroad, I would argue to you that we weaken it here at home. When we ignore sovereignty at home, we are truly lost. And something's happened there. We tend to become isolated. We tend to antagonize the other abroad. When we do that, we tend to engage in behavior that is corrosive of democracy. And just to give you a few dates here, this consent of the governed, we can look at 1776 and what's going on here in western North Carolina in the late summer and early fall. There is no respect of Cherokee sovereignty. You're going to have 45, 50 towns and villages burned down here in western North Carolina in August and September of 1776. But we do tend to respect sovereignty abroad. And that's true until we get to 1898, and then we really have this existential crisis, this crisis of conscience. Are we going to remain true to the ideals of the Declaration, or are we going to grab land from Spain and not respect the sovereignty of the people of Cuba, the people of Puerto Rico, and the people of the Philippines? And then I see importance of 2026, where we may be starting to strongly walk away from this notion of foreign adventurism. We have progress, we have setbacks, we have abolished slavery, we had women's suffrage enacted, we had labor protections, we desegregated our schools for a short period of time, we enacted a Voting Rights Act, marriage equality, Americans with Disabilities Act. So we've had those, we've also had setbacks. And here, I believe, put this slide up twice today, I believe this, that no gain is permanent, I believe that no loss is permanent, and I believe that civic maintenance is essential. I believe in the following syllogism. I believe that people are flawed. I believe that people make governments, and therefore governments are flawed, always. So I want to tell you a little story here about these two gentlemen. Let's see here if we can get that one to come up. This is Senator Thaddeus Stevens on the left and President Abraham Lincoln on the right. And this is a vignette that comes from the movie Lincoln, but this is historical fiction that leans strongly into the record. So in that movie Lincoln, there's a fictional conversation between the radical Republican Thaddeus Stevens, who's the legislative leader leading the charge to abolish slavery, and he's also the legislative leader of the African American cause. And there's a scene in the film where Lincoln and Stevens are having a conversation in the basement of the White House, and Lincoln confronts Stevens' undiluted ideology, his principled stand, and Lincoln counsels him. A compass I learned when I was surveying, it'll point you true north from where you're standing, but it's got no advice about the swamps, the deserts, and the chasms you'll encounter along the way. And if in the pursuit of your destination, you plunge ahead heedless of obstacles and achieve nothing more than to sink in the swamp, what's the point of knowing true north? Now that's a fictionalized quote, but here's what's not fiction. Lincoln was a surveyor from 1833 to 1836. Lincoln wrote to the newspaper editor, Horace Greeley, sympathetic to the cause of the abolition of slavery, writes to him in August of 1862. He says, if I can save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. Now he's writing that to Greeley when he has the Emancipation Proclamation draft sitting on his desk. He's waiting for a Union victory to make the Declaration of Emancipation not to seem to be the work of a desperate commander-in-chief. Now, Lincoln also restrains two of his subordinates in the field. In August of 1861, he rescinded Fremont's order in Missouri to free the enslaved people, and he does the same thing again in May of 1862 when David Hunter, his administrator of the Department of the South, had said all the enslaved people of South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida were to be free. He rescinds that order. Now, why is he doing that? For Lincoln, this is all about Kentucky. Kentucky was the linchpin of the Union. It had been the linchpin of the 1860 election. It's the state where Senator John Crittenden had hailed from, and he almost saved the Union from a war in the days between Lincoln's election and the firing on Fort Sumter. Lincoln's reasoning is simple. Lose Kentucky, lose the war. Lose the country, lose democracy. 5 days after the Union victory at Antietam which is the bloodiest single day of the war in September of 1862, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. We need the idealist, and we need the pragmatist. We need the person showing true north, cleaving to that. We need the leader on how to successfully navigate the swamps, the deserts, the chasms. That's the essential dynamic tension of a healthy democracy. Jefferson embodied both in the same person, mind and pen, and being human, Jefferson was flawed. So a thriving, healthy democracy can never rely upon a single person nor a small group of people, but as many as possible, all debating and working in the public sphere. What should we recall when we despair of democracy falling into ruin? For me, that's a very simple answer, and I go back to Thomas Paine, December 23rd, 1776. In the freezing cold of Valley Forge, there's almost no food, there are very few shoes. The enlistments are days away from being expired. Washington is on verge of losing this war that nobody had any expectation of winning. And he goes to Paine and basically says, give me a pep talk, Tom. I've got to have it. And it's the King Daddy pep talk ever written in the English language. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and the thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods. And it would be a strange thing indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Britain, with an army to enforce her tyranny, has declared that she has a right not only to tax, but to bind us in all cases whatsoever. And if being bound in such a manner is not slavery, there is not such a thing as slavery upon earth. Even the expression is impious, for on so unlimited a power can belong only to God. I'll take this from Jesse Jackson. It's darkest before the dawn. And I do believe in a rising American sun. So a book that has been heavily influential in my thinking for at least 20 years is George Packer's The Unwinding. And Packer goes on at length in his book describing the various institutions that we created in the wake of World War II. And he also then makes the case that these institutions have a limited shelf life. And we can see what these institutions starting to crumble. And there's despair, there's anxiety that comes with that, but there's also now an opportunity to replace those. So as the post-World War II era has come to a close, is coming to a close, the economic security, essential in the Happy Days motif, is in decline. Outgroups have gained both greater economic and political status. People who didn't have power, economically or political, have gained it over the past 70 years. And that has then resulted in the dominant group feeling threatened by this relative loss of their own status. One post-World War II political party has been fully remade, and the other is now, I would argue, undergoing significant transformation. Novel leadership inserted its DNA into an existing party and successfully exploited and redirected a rudderless portion of the working and middle class, promising those who had lost significant relative economic or political status that it could make all that hurt go away, not by focusing on the root causes, but on cultural scapegoats, holding the scapegoats responsible for the diminution of this economic and political status. Over the past decade, we have been administered political fentanyl to numb the pain of the loss of status. Is democracy fragile? Yes, democracy is always fragile. And again, no gain is permanent, no loss is permanent. Civic maintenance is essential. And now I'll quote you some Lewis Carroll, the Red Queen. And the Red Queen says in Alice in Wonderland, "Now, here you see, it takes all the running you can do just to stay in the same place." So sometimes when it feels like we're not making progress, if we weren't running, we would be even further lost. So what do I believe are the true enemies of democracy? The true enemy of democracy is not authoritarianism. Rather, the true enemies are nihilism, sustained cynicism, physical isolation, and seeking comfort at all costs, including selling democratic freedoms for comfort. Those are the devils. Those are, in the Old Testament sense of the word, the satans, the satans, the adversaries at the present day crossroads. It's our selling of our souls to nihilism, sustained cynicism, and physical isolation and comfort that give rise to authoritarianism. Starve authoritarianism of those nutrients, and authoritarianism rots on the vine. I'll parenthetically state that the algorithms of social media are the overarching devils of the contemporary drama. They amplify nihilism. They amplify sustained cynicism. They promise a frictionless universe, a safe bubble, and those algorithms thrive in the media of social isolation. If we drop the nihilist pose, if we come out into the public square and we talk to each other face to face, if we take a chance, if we take a risk, if we make ourselves vulnerable for a moment, that not only does the authoritarianism collapse, but the essential nutrients for democracy are now present, and they're positively interacting. And we're growing the democracy, healing the democracy, one conversation at a time when we meet face to face and make ourselves vulnerable. Okay, so here's your quiz. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Okay, so who said that? Okay.
Thomas Stark.
Say again?
Thomas Stark King.
Okay, well, we got Martin Luther King and Thomas Stark King. Okay, so he's borrowing it. Okay, MLK Jr. is borrowing it. So looks where he borrows it from. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure that it bends towards justice. Now, who said that? Because that's where King got it. Okay, you're going to love this one. Okay, I'm throwing you all the red meat I can. I've already quoted one Unitarian, so I'm going to quote a second Unitarian, and that's Theodore Parker. Okay, that's where it comes from first in 1853, Transcendentalist Unitarian abolitionist. So my position is this, that the moral arc of the universe is neutral. It doesn't bend anywhere. I would argue this, it does nothing without people, and I would also argue to you that if it's left alone by the mass of people, that it bends towards concentrations of power and concentrations of wealth. It bends towards authoritarianism and oligarchy when most people sit around and do nothing. The moral arc of the universe only bends when we make it bend. That's my position. And the good news is that we have arc benders everywhere. And just this past week, I'll give you two. Katie Fang. Anybody know who Katie Fang is? Okay. Katie Fang is a journalist. And here's Congress jumping up and down, wanting the unredacted Epstein files and not getting them. And here's this one little journalist, and she files a lawsuit and gets the federal judge saying you're causing her journalistic harm, you have to turn it over. Congress could have done that. They didn't figure it out. Katie Fang figured it out. Katie Fang figured out how to bend the moral arc of the universe. Now, the next one's a little bit easier. Who's Air Force Major Jason Watson? Okay, so he's standing on the steps of the Congress this past week in full dress uniform, holding up a sign of resistance. He's arrested, probably court-martialed, probably drummed out of the Air Force. But he's bending the moral arc. I see a new crop of candidates from New York to Colorado to Michigan. They're young, they're millennials, they're almost down as young as Gen Z. And they are representing the class of people that want to own a home but can't, the renting class, the working class. And they're making their voices heard, and they are causing ripples to go through the establishment. And everybody in this room is an arc bender. Just keep bending the arc. And that's where I'll close today. Go bend it. Thank you all very much. Okay, do I stand up here for questions or?
Thank you. John, thank you so much for the gift of such reflection and inspiration and conversations that'll come. We'll invite you to chat for a few minutes after service with the Zoomies and then with the roomies during potluck. So thank you so much. May we be grateful for those who have declared freedom, faithful to those who expanded its meaning, and courageous enough to continue their work. As we prepare for our time of connecting, including announcements, introductions, joys, and concerns, please know that they'll be edited out before they're posted on YouTube. As a lay-led congregation, we appreciate all our volunteers, including our Sunday service team, Warren, Ben, Edgar, Diane, and Penny on Zoom, Jude for our music, and Claire for our YouTube channel. Our greeters were Bill and Andrew this morning, hospitality, Karen, Dana, and Jeff, with help from Paige. We're also grateful for all the diverse gifts of time, talent, and treasure. Some of that generosity prized us for air conditioning, which is really helpful this morning. All financial donations are appreciated in person, by mail, or on PayPal. We acknowledge together gifts given in love and hope continue a cycle of love and hope. Now for announcements, fellowship, and community. Zoom first. Are there any announcements on Zoom? A last final pebble as we hold what we have shared, as well as the joys too tender to speak and the concerns too heavy for words today. You are not alone in any of it. Remember that we belong to one another. Now I invite you into a minute of silence. You can choose to meditate, pray, reflect on something you've heard here today, or simply sit silently in community with others, and I'll bring you back with the chimes. This weekend, women across the nation are gathering in parks, on street corners, in houses of worship, in town squares and on courthouse steps to publicly read aloud the Women's Declaration of Independence. They do so to affirm that the promise of equality remains unfinished and call for the full realization of equal rights under the law. On the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding, they are reminding us that declarations are not only historical documents, they are living calls to conscience and action. Today, our congregation adds its voice to that nationwide reading, and I invite Barbara up to read the Women's Declaration of Independence.
Any clapping at the end will be for all of us who have fought for this, okay? This is a Women's Declaration of Independence presented to the American people on July 4th, 2026. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one half of the people to call a nation back to its own truths, we declare the causes which compel us to speak. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all persons are created equal, that women are persons, and that government exists to secure these truths, not to delay or deny them. The words equal justice under the law are carved in stone, yet they have never applied fully to women because women have never had full legal equality under the United States Constitution. Although the 14th Amendment promised equal protection, it has never been applied equally to women, and although the Equal Rights Amendment, ratified in 2020, establishes equality, it has not been implemented. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Women bring forth life. They sustain families, they serve their communities, and defend this nation. To deny them constitutional equality is to deny their dignity, human and rights, yet courts apply a lesser standard, intermediate scrutiny, to laws that discriminate on the basis of sex, allowing inequality to continue. The highest standard, strict scrutiny, remains unavailable to women. As a result, women are denied economic equality, equal protection under the law, and security against violence and exploitation. These injustices are not accidental. They are legally authorized. We declare women are equal citizens of this republic. Equality must be clear in law and its enforcement. We call upon the people to demand the full implementation and enforcement of the Equal Rights Amendment by all courts and all government officials. A nation that treats women unequally cannot be a democracy. Therefore, we declare the Equal Rights Amendment is part of the Constitution, and it is law. Women will no longer accept inequality. We demand equality now, nothing more, nothing less.
Barbara, thank you so much. We'll put a link in the UU View. Our closing song is Hopeful, America the Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful, far heroes proved in liberating strife. Who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine till
in school, we used to sing it something like this. Listen here. Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies, far amber waves of grain, far purple mountain majesties, over the fruited plain. But now wait a minute, I'm talking about America, sweet America. You know, God done shed his grace on thee. He crowned our good. Yes, he did. Every brotherhood from sea to shining sea. You know, I wish I had somebody to help me sing this. America, I love you, America. You see, my God, he done shed his grace on thee, and you ought to love him for it, 'cause he crowned our good. He told me he would. Every brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh Lord, I thank you, Lord.
Our chalice extinguishing. Though we extinguish this chalice, it lights goes with us. May we be grateful for those who declared freedom, faithful for those who expanded its meaning, and courageous enough to continue their work. May we help write, with our words, our choices, and our lives, the next chapter of liberty, justice, and love. We know you have many choices on how to spend your Sunday morning. We're deeply grateful that you choose to be in community with us. Following service, we invite the Zoomies to join in conversation, and John will stop by for a visit, and the Roomies to enjoy potluck and conversation again with John downstairs. Visitors, some of our extroverted members and friends will use the red cups so you can easily find those who like to chat. Next Sunday, we celebrate 2 more birthdays, Henry David Thoreau's 209th birthday and our fellowship's 54th. Please rise and body your spirit. Those in the sanctuary may choose to hold hands. What kind of an amoeba will we make today? Yay. Now join together in spirit as we recite our closing covenant. Oh, there we go. We get Ben too. Thank you. That's great. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and community is its goal. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So let's turn to face the door and wave goodbye to the Zoomies, and they will wave back to us. Yay. Wonderful. Go in peace, go in hope.